Hi guys, today I'm going to be planting strawberries in this container and I wanted to bring you guys along with me and show you a few tips that I've learned along the way. Strawberries are an easy plant to grow and I like to grow as much food as I can myself because that way I know what's gone into it, what medium it's been grown in, what fertilizers have been put into it, if there any pesticides have been added to it. I don't add any pesticides or anything to any food that I'm going to consume. And strawberries are fun to grow, they're easy to grow, and just a few simple tips and you can grow them too. The first thing is determining what type of strawberry plant you want. There are 3 varieties: June bearing, everbearing, and day neutral. June bearing produce their crop in June. They produce a large amount at one time. If you're looking for something, if you're looking for fruit to can or preserve or make into jellies or jams, June bearing is probably the best way to go because you get a big quantity at one time. Everbearing varieties usually produce 2 crops, one in June and then one in late fall, depending on how long your growing season is. If you live in a warmer climate with a longer growing season, you may even see a 3rd crop. It may be a little smaller, but it is possible. And then there's day neutral, which produce a smaller berry, but consistently throughout the entire growing season into late fall. And sometimes it's a good idea to mix and match the varieties. That way you have strawberries kind of going through the entire season. Some in the beginning and then throughout the summer and into fall. So it's really up to you. Second, you want to determine where you're going to plant your strawberries. If you want to plant them in the ground or in a container. I prefer to plant them in containers because I have planted them out back next to the tomatoes. And next thing I knew, I had strawberry plants popping up like 10 feet down by the beans. And I never even noticed that they had sent off any runners or anything. So they kind of got away from me. And that is very possible. But if that's something that you want and you want to plant them in the ground and just let the whole patch naturalize, go for it. I prefer containers. Next, you want to get a good soil, a good potting soil. If you're planting in containers, you don't want to use any soil from the ground. You want a potting mix because it is a lot lofty and airy and light, and it allows for lots of drainage. In ground soil, when you put it in a container, it doesn't act the same way as it does in the ground. It can get compacted and heavy, it can smother the roots, and strawberries are a very shallow rooted plant. The roots usually get about 6 to 8 inches deep, and so this container is about a foot high and it's more than enough room. You don't want anything super long because it's just kind of like a waste of soil and space. You don't need something 2-3 feet high if you're only going to have, just a few inches of roots. I'm going to be using Espoma's organic potting mix. Typically, when I grow any type of produce, fruit, vegetable, I like to stay as organic as possible. I also want to mention too, any container that you have, make sure that you have adequate drainage. This barrel only had 1 drainage hole in it, so I went ahead, it's wobbly, and you can see I went in and drilled about 6 to 8 more drainage holes. Okay, so I'm going to fill this up. So, and I am going to add in a little bit of the Land and Sea compost for some extra nutrients into this soil because this is filled with a lot of good things. Next, I'm going to add some fertilizer. When you're growing in containers, you need to remember that the plant can't go out and search for nutrients. Whatever you put into this soil, into this container, is what the plant is going to take up. So you basically have to continuously feed it and add more nutrients into the soil as the growing season progresses, so that way the plant is fed and happy and has the energy to continue producing fruit. I'm going to be using the berry tone, and I'm just going to follow the instructions on the back. And it does say for potted plants, for new plants, mix 2 cups of berry tone per cubic foot of soil. So that bag was 1 cubic foot, so I'm going to add 2 cups. One, 2. And just mix it in. Now I am going to leave a little bit of room around here because I am going to top dress this with some straw. You can use mulch if you want, but it's a good idea to put something underneath it. You can even put some of those strawberry plant cages or collars where they're plastic in a circle and you kind of just clip them around the base. And that way the fruit just kind of rests on top of it. But it is a good idea to put some barrier between the fruit and the soil because you don't want the fruit sitting in wet soil because it'll rot. And now we're going to plant them up. I'm going to be planting Seascape strawberries. These are an everbearing strawberry, and I'm just excited to get some fruit out of them. So I think I'm going to, I have 4 of them, so I think I'm going to plant them right along the edges here. And then I've also got a few herbs because I want to do some companion planting. And companion planting is basically mixing and matching different varieties and different types of plants and herbs that complement each other throughout the growing season. And I have read up, I haven't done this before, so I'm going to do this today, but that some herbs can repel, excuse me, some herbs can repel pests and insects. So I've got some basil, some chive, and a rosemary, which I think I'm going to use right in the center. Here we go. Also, what's very important when you're planting strawberries that you don't plant them too deep because you don't want to bury the crown of the plant. The crown is where the roots and the stems meet, and you don't want to plant the crown below the soil line because you'll smother the plant. If you're uncertain or a little afraid to plant too deep, then you can plant them like a ½ inch above the soil line if that makes you feel better. Ooh. But let me show you. If you can see right there is the line between where the roots are going into the soil and right here where the plant is starting to send up stems. You want to keep the soil line right below the crown or right below this line just to make sure you don't smother it out. I'm going to remove these berries. Now I'm gonna go in and add some straw as my top dress, and that'll help kind of keep some of the pests and bugs out and keep some of the moisture in, because these do like to stay moist. They don't want to sit in like wet, soggy soil, but they do want like an even, consistent, moist type of a soil. Plus, this will also help keep the berries off the ground and off the soil. And we're done. This container only took about 20 to 30 minutes to do, and I just can't wait for it to start producing berries. If you try this method, just remember a few tips that I showed you and talked about. Determine what variety of strawberry you want, June bearing, ever bearing, or day neutral, and you can mix them up. Find a container that you want to use and just make sure that it has adequate drainage if you're using a container. If you're going to plant in the ground, just remember, keep an eye on those runners because they can take over. Also, a good organic potting soil. You don't want to use any soil from the ground. It doesn't behave the same way. Fertilize, fertilize, fertilize. That is very important because anything that you grow in containers only gets nutrients from what you put back in the soil. I'm just going to follow the back of the bag of the instructions, and that'll be my fertilizing schedule. And then top dress with straw or mulch. That helps keep moisture in. Because they do like a moist soil. They don't want wet feed, they don't want it soggy or dripping, but they do like an even, consistent moisture. And it also puts a barrier between the soil and the fruit, so the fruit isn't sitting in wet soil and rotting. And then just find a place in your garden or anywhere in your landscape that gets full sun. The more sun, the better. These plants love full sun. And that's it. So guys, that's it for this video. I'm gonna go find a spot for this container. If you try this method, definitely leave me a comment in the comments section below. Let me know how it goes, and I will definitely keep you guys updated as the season progresses. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day. Bye.